they come in. Today's presenter is Christy Borman. Christy is a senior level business consultant here and has primarily been consulting in the areas of accounting, finance, and custom reporting. However, with her experience working in every module within SX.e and Cloud Suite, she can consult on almost any topic in the ERP. With that, let me turn the meeting over to Christy.
Hello, everybody, and good afternoon. Please feel free to put any questions that you may have in the chat. We'll be watching those during the session. And we're talking about our data purges today. So I wanted to start out with just a quick agenda of what we're going to talk about today, which is data purges, the technical services piece that goes with the data purge, any tips and tricks, and questions and answers. So the first thing I like to talk about is what exactly is a data purge? And it just means we're going to remove some records. We are going to delete things out of your database. So if I made a purchase order to a vendor back in 1997, do I still need that information in my database? That would be a transaction that if it was fully closed, we would want to go ahead and purge that because we don't need it any longer. We don't need to see that for reference. And the reason that we do that is space is finite. There's only so much space. And when we also do a dump and load, which reorganizes the data after we purge it, we see faster processing speeds. And for any of you that are going through the process of migrating from your on-premise to CSD, you will see that data migration will happen much faster with less records and less data to move from your on-premise GUI into the cloud. We complete the data purge off hours, and this is because the purge programs will slow down your system. It's a lot of chugging and going through to determine if transactions are qualifying for purge. So we do that off hours so we can use all the processing speeds and functionality capabilities with our purge programs. And I have clients that are all over the board. Some companies I work with, we do a purge once a year, which is great because then that purge only takes a few hours because it's just the new stuff. There's others that it's once every 10 years or once every 5 years, kind of all over the board. But the more regularly you complete a purge, the faster that purge completes. And you're maximizing your performance speed because you're minimizing the data that we have to chug through. And who can do a data purge? Well, anyone can do a data purge if they want to. There's a couple of technical tasks that you want to complete that we'll talk about here today. And then it's just a matter of running those purge programs. And they are standard programs that with security, you access right from within the application. So here's a list of the standard purge programs that are available today. And again, they're just have to grant operator security to be able to access the program. And then you navigate to it just like you would navigate to any other report that you would be running in the software. So I've kind of grouped them into buckets. One I do want to point out is number 23, the company purge. So that is not a part of the standard purge programs, but I didn't want it to get lost in the shuffle by excluding it. It is a custom program that we run, but purging companies is pretty quick and easy because there isn't a validation. It's just, are you in the company? All right, you're out of here. So it's a quick process to run. When you purchase SX.e, it gets delivered with Company 1000, which is an Infor test database. And then when you're going through the implementation process, you might have Company 7000 for testing or 9000 for data conversions. And again, these companies take up space. And if you're never logging into a fully divisionalized Infor test company 1001, we want to get rid of that. And definitely before we migrate to the cloud, we want to get rid of that. The data migration factory has a lot of work on their hands. We don't need extra companies that we never log into coming across in that project. The other point to make is because these are all different programs, you can have different parameters. So for example, I oftentimes see sales orders are kept longer than a transfer order. So if I'm moving product between warehouse main and warehouse east, I probably don't need that transfer order more than, I don't know, a year or two. But if it's a sales order, I may want to keep that sales order for 9 years or 10 years because that's, you know, a customer facing document versus something internally that I'm moving back and forth. Additionally, number 20, 21, and 22, these log files. So if you've enabled auditing in your system, maybe you want to track anytime a specific field gets changed, that writes to the audit log. And if you're not reviewing that within 30, 60, 90 days, you may never review it. So we want to get rid of those types of records as well. Same with your event manager. When you turn on an event to say, hey, send me a notification when a new ship to record is completed or is created. How long do I need that event to be out there? And again, that's probably a much shorter time than a historical accounts payable transaction, for example. The technical services pieces, I always have them complete a full backup. I have never in my 12 plus years of doing data purges had to restore from backup. However, if there was anything that went awry, you would need that full backup in order to, you know, return to business as normal. The next two pieces help with the speed of the purge completing. So after imaging is a technology which is taking a snapshot of things, so I'm able to restore nearly full time. And data integrity mode is talking about the qualifications within my different fields and parameters that I'm running. So by turning those off and running the standard purge programs, it makes it run faster because it just doesn't have as many hoops to jump through. And then when we're completed with the data purge, they would need to turn back on. If you're running report manager, so there's a report manager and a report scheduler, but if you're running a report manager, usually we see clients running 3 or 5 of those. We can kick that up to be 10 or 12 so that we can fire off, you know, purge programs more quickly. And they are not dependent on each other. So if I'm running a sales order purge, I can run an accounts receivable purge at the same time. It is still going through and validating against each other, but there isn't anything that says, oh, I can't run this until this one is done. So a couple of tips and tricks. If you're not sure, complete it in your test environment first. That will tell you, what you have to expect. Each program has a unique date, and I talked about that, how you can save some things for 10 years and other things for 2 months. There are a couple of gotchas with the data purges. The most common one is in any invoice processing journal, there's a field called sales manager flag, and it tells me that the data has been updated into the sales manager module. So if it's an invoice processing journal that has not been updated to the sales manager module, it will be set to no and will be omitted from my data purge. So if I've got a sales order that's sitting out there from 2002 that didn't get merged into the sales manager, I still want to purge that guy. That, it's very unlikely that that would happen because it's in your stored job and it should be yes, but that's just one of these little gotchas that we see with the purge programs. The other big one is about blanket orders, and this applies to both the purchase order blankets and the sales order blankets. So I place a blanket for 1,000, maybe the customer canceled it after they got 900. So I still have 100 open to fill, but I have canceled all of my subsequent blanket releases. All of those suffixes are canceled and closed. I'm never going to have, another release. Those in all of those orders. So if I have 100 different suffixes against that one blanket, none of those 100 will purge unless all of them qualify. So if we have this condition where my blanket order is not fully released, we do a data scrub on the header to trick it that it is fully released, and then it will go through the purge program as we expect. So little things just to check for. And when we talk about transactions qualifying for purge, so if we think of a sales order, right? And so we invoice it and then the customer pays it. That's not all the purge program is looking for. So yes, that sales order has to be 100% paid in full, so my receivable is closed. But additionally, if I have a tied purchase order, that purchase order also has to be fully costed and closed, and the payable has to be paid and inactive. So when you have ties between things, it's all of the associated transactions have to qualify for a purge. So oftentimes you'll complete a purge and you'll say, hey, why is this PO still out here? Well, the reason the PO is still out here is because we haven't paid it yet. We've costed it and it's in the close stage, but we haven't paid that tied invoice within the purge date parameter. When it comes to general ledger, we have the option of deleting our period summaries or not. And my recommendation is you never purge those. They don't take a whole lot of space. It's just one row of data per GL account number and year. So not a ton of data there, but it allows me to always generate my financial statements. So as an accountant myself, that's pretty important to me. So when we run the general ledger purge, do not purge those summaries, leave them there. We want to purge the transactions, get those out, because every single transaction has at least two GL postings, one debit and one credit, but generally more than just two in a journal. So lots and lots of transactions that we can get out of there. There's also an option about consolidating and how we consolidate, and what that really means is there's a report out there called GLRA, General Ledger Report Activity, that allows us to tell if my summary amounts are in balance to my detailed transactions. And so if I use this consolidate option through my purge program, it has a post date equal to today. So now this gives me, in my inquiry, I'm seeing this, purge transaction out there. So the workaround for that is to data scrub those transactions so that they fall in the right period. But again, if you're purging things from 12 years ago, you don't want to see a consolidated entry one time for 12 years ago. You just don't need it. So when you make it none, then it doesn't create any of these consolidated transactions with the bad date. I don't have to worry about data scrubbing it because I don't need those transactions. So those are the big tips and tricks. And on the right-hand side, I just did a sample of a data purge that I did a couple months ago, where I've run the standard. This is the sales order purge, where I've told it, hey, here's my archive date, and it works the archive date in conjunction with options number 6 and 7, the number of days to keep. So because I have those number of days to keep as one day, this program is going to purge everything 12/31/2017 and prior that qualifies. Number 3, I said, yes, give me the detailed transactions. And then the bottom screen print, I just wanted to show you what that meant. So literally, it's the order number and order suffix and a total count of the transactions that I have purged. So this report here of 670 orders to purge, it took about 2 hours for that report to generate, start to finish. The orders, the sales orders, is always the longest one. I always fire it off first because it takes the longest of any other purge that's out there, just because of all of the different validations. And you see that I have other options about archiving canceled orders only. So I could run this on a stored job once a month that purges canceled orders, that are so many days old, right? So I'm constantly running that. And you can set up the purge programs to auto run. I don't recommend it for anything in mass because you don't have a backup to restore. However, it is very nice for deleting inactive pricing records that are 3 years old, or deleting these event manager transactions, things like that. So generally we don't see them scheduled, but if you're running just a onesie twosie here, that's fine. It's gonna get you what you want, which is to reduce the number of records. So that is our Purge program overview. So we have our technical services team give us a backup, then we run our Purge programs and enjoy having less data, and with a dump and load, much faster and efficient processing. I don't see any questions in the chat unless I'm just missing it, but I don't see any questions in the chat. Julie, do you have anything else you would like me to address with respect to data purges? All right, I don't see her there. Okay, well, if there are any questions after the fact, feel free to go ahead and email those into us. My email is kborman, KBOARMAN, @centraldata.com. You can also send them to our general support line at support@centraldata.com and reference that you were on the Data Purge webinar and had an additional follow-up question, and that will get routed to me as well. So I really appreciate everybody's time today. And if you're interested in a data purge, please reach out and we can get that scheduled. Thanks.